Hey everyone! With the world like it is at the moment, you know, all that distracting noise that I've talked about in countless other videos, well, it's hard to work out what's really the important stuff when it comes to making decisions at your place. So let's take some time to talk about this thing called decision making. You'll know for sure that if there's one thing school leaders are not short of, it's having to make decisions. Even though there's that crazy noise in the background, your world and the world of your school doesn't just stop. So you still find yourself dealing in decisions, big ones, small ones, urgent ones, this should have been done yesterday ones. They still come thick and fast, don't they? Your world just keeps on turning. And sometimes, let's face it, even at your place, it can feel like you're standing in the middle of the crossroads with some map written in hieroglyphics, and everyone's asking for directions and wanting to know now, right now. So how do we make decisions that are not only smart, but also wise? Well, that's where this idea of World 1 and World 2 thinking comes in. It's a simple but powerful way to balance what's practical with what's meaningful. Let's not get confused with first world problems though, that's a totally different video entirely. No, World 1 thinking is the world of facts, data and logistics. It's the measurable, the tangible, the spreadsheet side of leadership. World 1 says we have X dollars, Y teachers and Z hours to make it happen. It's about budgets, rosters, reports and evidence. The world where you can show you're working and prove that you're working with the numbers backing it all up. Or not. Then there's World 2 thinking. This is the world of values, people and purpose. It's messier, more emotional and infinitely harder to quantify. To be honest, I much prefer World 2 thinking. It's where I naturally lie. World 2 says, what's right for our people? What's kind? What's sustainable? It's the heartbeat behind the data, the stuff that makes leadership human. The problem is, education right now is heavily tilted toward World 1. Money seems to talk way louder than anything else. And as a result, it feels like everything's measured, tracked, compared, and published, and then done all over again. Outcomes do matter, yes, but I'd argue they're not really the whole story. And of course, data can also be open to interpretation. So when you lead entirely from World 1, you risk making decisions that might be efficient, but not effective. Technically correct, but emotionally tone deaf. And when I found myself in World 1 thinking, it was usually at budget time. I had to move stuff around to make the numbers work. And if the numbers didn't work, then, well, there was a problem, usually involving meeting up with the auditor later in the year. They never seemed to have quite the sense of humour that I had. I've got to admit that. The truth is, good leadership happens in the space between the two worlds. You need World 1 to make things work and World 2 to make them worth it. In tough times, it's tempting to double down on the measurable stuff. You know, numbers feel safe. They give us something to hold on to. And I've always wondered if the government always focused on attendance figures, not because they actually care, but because it's something entirely measurable. Bums on seats, well, that's pretty easy to count, isn't it? They then dress it up in fancy terms like engagement. But World 2, that's the world of culture, kindness, connection. And I'd argue that this is what really carries people through the uncertainty of the future ahead of us. Right now, schools are facing a lot of external noise, funding shifts, curriculum changes, political turbulence. And in this kind of environment, it's easy to get stuck in survival mode, chasing data, filling forms, hitting targets. But I reckon the most courageous leaders around actually pause long enough before panicking to ask the important World 2 questions. What's the right thing to do here? How will this decision feel to our people? And what story do I want this choice to tell about our values at our place? World 1 does make things work, but World 2 makes them matter. Of course, the magic lies in blending both. We need both, but I'd argue one shouldn't dictate the other. When I finally pulled on my courageous leadership cape and said no to a recommendation that made perfect financial sense but didn't sit right with our culture, well, I got my reward 3 months later. Loyalty, effort, and a shared sense of he waka eka noa. We're all in this together. That's World 2 ROI, return on integrity, right there. So how do you use both worlds wisely? Well, I reckon you start with World 2. Begin with values, what matters most. Then bring in the data to support, not dictate the decision. Test your thinking aloud. Ask someone, does this make sense on paper and in people terms? And watch your language. If you're talking only in metrics, bring in meaning. And if you're lost in feelings, well, just go back and check the facts. You see, when you balance both worlds, your decision can carry both clarity and heart. They're not just defensible, they're actually inspiring. And that's a pretty cool place to be. Of course, right now, when the outside world is noisy and uncertain, that kind of leadership is exactly what schools need. Because the truth is, the best leaders don't just live in World 1 or World 2. Instead, they build a bridge between them, and they walk that bridge every single day. Okay, so the next time you're stuck on a tough decision, ask yourself, what does World 1 say? And then ask, what does World 2 say? And then lead from both. Because you know what? I reckon schools don't just need leaders who can count what matters. They need leaders who can care about it too. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, then you'll undoubtedly enjoy reading my book. Am I Having Fun is stacked full of great leadership ideas to help free up your thinking time so that you can enjoy your job a lot more. Go and get your copy now.